And welcome to class 9 of Telling Your Life Story. And I'm excited this week because following last week's class, so this is week 9, remember in the beginning I said in 8 weeks it's possible to write the story of your life if you will spend at least a half hour or more every day for 8 weeks writing a memoir, a memory of your life. And I, of course, had to see whether I could actually do it myself. So I'm along with the class, have written and with some help of a friend, edited, although I don't guarantee a few typos didn't slip through because it was a little rushed. But I wrote the story of my life, and putting a table of contents, I chose 55 of the 51 of the 155 prompting questions to write on. And some of the ones I chose were, number 1 is, when I grow up, what do I want to do? David, does my name fit? Mother memories, father, childhood money, fun grandparent memories, independence and responsibility, coming of age, my dating philosophy, marriage relationships, favorite things about my 4 daughters, et cetera, on into career and in retirement, things like, instead of retirement, I call it re-inspirement, because I think it's a time where we can literally reinvent ourselves and create an encore career or volunteering opportunities. So and there's a chapter on my near-death experience. Those who've been here through the 8 weeks and watched the video know that 2022 was a very transformational year for me. I had a double lung transplant last May. So I'm
not wearing a mask?
No, I'm not wearing a mask.
Because we have somebody at our church and she went through a double.
Mm-hmm.
And her doctor told her to always wear a mask when she's going to be with groups of people.
Yeah, it's somewhat optional, but they say if you're in a large crowd, they would like you to do that.
Yeah.
So I don't consider this a large enough crowd that I worry. But if I went to a concert or shopping, I do have a mask. So.
Well, you must feel like you've got a whole new lease.
I do have a whole new lease on
I
life.
the same thing. I thought it was fascinating.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
And right by the door there is the outline for today.
Okay.
Today's subject matter is going to be a little less philosophical, which we've covered a lot of, kind of the big picture over the course of the 8 weeks. Would you say that's true? I would say we kind of went from 10,000 feet and looked at our life story, the big picture, the cycle of life, first half of life versus second half of life. So there's a lot of that kind of thing that's included, and they're all in the videos that you guys can look at. And so today we'll look a little bit more at some of the technical aspects of writing and writing well. What's the difference? Well, we'll talk about that today. So you got that. So anyway, one of my favorite chapters I wrote on was the 9 lowest points of my life. That sounds like it'd be a real downer, but it actually allowed me to expand really one of the worst chapters of my life and get it completely out, and it was very therapeutic, and so I feel much better having gotten it on paper. So this one's also available as a free download at myideafactory.net. This is my autobiography, which is 140 pages with photos. I ended up doing it in color. There's the one talking about my ex-wife, good cop, bad cop. Her picture, seminary where I went to school, my 3 daughters. So it just adds a lot to have photos as well as text. There's even a photo of me here on the one on the my near-death story, and it I don't know where it is now, but it was oh yeah, here's a part of my worst stories. It says polygraph tests actually do not work. I had a disagreement with my ex-wife as she forced me to get a polygraph test. It showed wrongly that I was not telling the truth, and it's because of the way they asked the questions. It was very, very improper, the way they asked the questions, and I found out later. I figured, hey, if you're telling the truth, it's got to prove that you're telling the truth, right? Nope, not necessarily. If they ask the questions wrong and causes your blood pressure to go up or your heart rate to go up, then all of a sudden they really just should call it a respiratory and pulse test.
Blood pressure probably.
Yeah. So that was an interesting chapter.
So David, does your wife feel fully vindicated now? Because
no, because I proved to her, or I thought I did, that this was she met with him first and said, this is what I think is happening, and I expect that you're gonna find out the same, and here's the money for the test. So he was kind of like just paid to validate her. So he asked these questions in a way where, of course, it's going to show that, he tried to upset me, and he did. And I tried to stay cool, but anyway, so that's all.
So
It's now been completely resolved, and we're friends, so.
you actually publish
Yeah.
people's works.
Yeah, well, I actually connect you to be able to do it yourself, or I'll help you.
Okay.
One of the services that I offer, the class is free, but if later on, after you get a lot of this done, you need help with editing, which, to be honest with you, if you're gonna attempt to do it for other than just your family, it's probably a good idea to have another set of eyes look at it. Then I offer my services to help with editing and maybe taking a machete to it and trimming it up to something a little. I had a friend do that with even my own, because it's not possible really to fully edit your own material. Any writer will tell you that, because you don't see the forest for the trees, and so what you need is somebody to come in with a chainsaw and say, you can say that a lot easier. No, that is off point. Stuff like that.
What do you charge for your editing?
I have a set rate at $50 an hour, but if it's people who've gone through the class, I could look at it as an overall project and say, I think this will take about 10 hours or whatever, and I'm really kind of creating my own on-car career in doing this.
Right.
I've served as a writer for a financial firm for 30 years, 35 years. I still write their TV commercials and that. So sort of my gift is taking complicated things and making them simpler. And so that fits well into this, because so many people look at writing their life story as like a 500-pound gorilla in the room, or an elephant that's just too big. But if you do it one bite at a time, whether you do it over 8 weeks, such as I'm suggesting with our new workbook, which I'm also going to do a commercial for here, which has the first 8 classes and 8 sample from my autobiography to go with each week. So this is available in print for $10 if you want a hard copy, or you can go to myideafactory.net, my website, and there's a little button for it, and you can download the PDF. So the $10 just basically covers my printing and shipping costs. So, but it is nice, because you guys know you have a whole bunch of pieces of paper in binders. Hopefully, like most people, when they come in for the first class, we set up with a binder and 4 divisions for your 4 stages of life: childhood, education, career and marriage, and retirement. So that you can, as you're writing, you can start filing them in the right place. And you can do it any way you want. You can start from the beginning of your childhood and work toward now, or you can start, as somebody said that they thought might be easier, which was starting with more recent memories and work backwards, kind of a strategic approach. So it's totally up to you. There's no right or wrong way to do it. So, but today we're going to talk about On Writing Well, which is a title of a book that I highly recommend. And I basically outlined it. By the way, let me just say, next week I'm becoming a great grandfather, I think today, for the 3rd time. And I actually wrote a song and sent it to him Saturday, because I was convinced it was going to happen on Saturday. Saturday was also the anniversary of losing my oldest grandson, Cole, 7 years ago. He was 20. And so, and they're naming this is his brother that's having the child, Zion Cole Dunn. So his name will be the middle name, and I thought, well, that might happen on Saturday. Still no baby. They got a midwife that's doing everything they can to promote it, and he's over in Atlanta. So next Monday, odds are very, very good I won't be here. So this, we'll skip next Monday and go the week after. So I'll have them know at the front desk so that people come. And you're welcome to still come and talk about your own memoirs if you want. If you're getting started and want to do that. I just can't be with you if I'm out of town, and I'll be back Tuesday. And so the following week, which would be 20th. So today's the 6th. So on the 20th, I'll cover what's on the back side, which is the 13th on there. So, all right. So today we're going to talk about 4 important elements of writing. Doesn't really matter if it's a memoir, autobiography, or just an article on anything, or just some memory that you have. According to William Zinsser, who's a author and editor for a number of big publishing houses, and he put out this book on writing well. I like short titles. I think the shorter the title, the better, and I thought he picked 3 good words to put together to kind of get to the point. And that's kind of his whole point of his book, is how to write and get to it and keep it moving. And so he says there are 4 important elements. Number 1 is clarity. The goal of writing should be clarity, he said. The key is editing and re-editing the first draft. If you can't make your point clearly, there's no reason to read it. That's telling it like it is. You've all probably read things where you just say, like, get to the point, or people talk to you and you just say, all right, that's all good, but what's the bottom line? Everybody wants the bottom line. Few people care about how you got to it. They just want to hear what your bottom line is. So, but make it clear. Secondly, simplicity. Avoid clutter, unnecessary words. Strip the sentences down of any fat and pretentiousness. And simple style represents very hard work. So that's really what I've noticed in writing copy, where I only have 60 seconds or 30 seconds. You got to make each word count and not, spread it out and try to impress people with big words. That's point 3, actually, brevity. Writing is like a good watch. It functions smoothly with no extra parts to get in the way. Use short words instead of long words. Now, a lot of times we think, oh, these long words really impress us if they're intellectual. But he says, and I tend to agree with him, that shorter words are better than longer words. Shorter sentences are better than longer sentences. I tend to write run-on sentences. So in going through the re-editing thing, a lot of times when you're writing your flow of thought, it all comes out as one sentence that's a paragraph, okay? And maybe 2, because you just don't know when to quit. You keep adding things onto it. Better to step back and say, period there, and start a new sentence, because it's easier to read that way. Most first drafts, he says, can be cut by 50%. So on mine, I ended up starting with printed out, it was 152 pages, and ended up with 138, not including the cover. When I said it's 140, that includes the cover too. So I did maybe, 25% cut. I could probably cut more, but I was, like I say, wanting to get it done and prove that it could be done in the 8 weeks. So I didn't, after going through it 5 times, about a third of it with somebody's help who took the machete to it, I learned from her how to take the machete to my own stuff, because she was just so, she'd read the sentence and say, too long, period here, this, that, and I'm like, yeah, that's really good, thank you. I agree with you. I agree with all of her edits. So she just didn't have time to go through the whole book in the timing that I wanted to get it done, so that's why I rushed it a little, and there are probably a few typos, but anyway. So brevity, humanity. He says this is crucial. This should sound like it's coming from you, like you're talking. You're not putting on airs of being more intellectual than you are, or more verbose than if you were talking to somebody. Who you are is more important than the subject you're writing about. So be natural, sound like yourself, etc. And this is a big temptation when you're writing, because you have time to think, about how could I make this sound even grander with more adjectives and more adverbs and things like that. But if you just get to the point, readers are smarter than we sometimes think, and we don't have to necessarily explain every detail. I mean, that's the whole thing of writing movie scripts and screenwriting, is giving the viewers credit to figure things out, and that's also true in writing. Now, when you're writing your autobiography, you can obviously write anything you want and take as much time as you want to explain it. But what he's saying there, don't be somebody on paper that you're not really in person, because people can smell that. Some people call it the stink test. Okay? If you know somebody and you start talking to them, and they're like, did you just read a book about that and you're just quoting it back to me, or what? Is it part of your life? So, okay, continue. He says, writing is a craft. Learning to use the tools of good English requires logical thinking. Opening, body, conclusion. Say what you're going to say it, and then if you need to, remind you, of what you said. Remind them. Writing is also hard and usually requires at least 3 to 4 rewrites to streamline. Okay, I'm duplicating there. Writing is talking to someone on paper, just like you would. Avoid putting on airs, speaking, because they dilute the message and your authority. If you keep repeating things and telling them what the conclusion ought to be, then you're like talking down to them. The same is true in writing. Learn to cut down your copy and enjoy doing it. At first, it was hard for me to take a red pen when I started in writing, because I thought that I needed all of this to convey it. But then, having worked with editors through the last 30 years, I've learned to be happy to say it in less. And okay, where am I here? Most readers can only process one idea per sentence. So that's a good sort of acid test. How many different ideas are you trying to convey in that one sentence? If it's more than one, you may lose them. And that's not what you want to do, because once you lose a reader, they may not continue reading. And so you don't want to put up stop signs that make people have to rethink everything.
Can I give an example?
Sure.
So I had a little business, and I had some new college students working for me. And I was it was a different business than what was my main business. So I would kind of think, as I was writing long emails of instruction of how these students should respond, and they were trying to, one of the men was trying to actually create a software program to do what it was that I was requesting. So I said, well, maybe we'll do this. Well, so maybe this would be a good idea. What do you think about that idea? Da 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 da. And he finally stopped me and he said, Marianne, he said, I'm working by the hour. And it's costing you money to write in this way. What I need is for you to say, I need you to do number 1, this.
Right.
Number 2, this. So the problem was not how I was writing, it was that I was using the writing to download my thought process, which is probably okay in a journal or in an autobiography, I've thought about this and that, but it's really not okay in a business writing situation. So it's funny that he says that it's got to be strict writing,
Get to the point.
you know.
You have-
But the thing is, a lot of my favorite novels are not that way. They're kind of taking you on the mental journey
Right. I
that
should
the
point out
author
that
is
this
doing.
is, this book is targeted at nonfiction writing,
Yeah.
nonfiction writing, which is an animal of a different thing, where you do want a lot of adjectives and you do want a lot of word pictures to
Yeah,
to
but
paint.
it's definitely your brain
Yeah.
that decides whether you can write clearly or not clearly.
Right.
Yeah, so there's a whole process there.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Could I share?
Sure.
Ring a bell. I'm a retired banker and I started my career eons ago. Part of it, I was a credit analyst. I had to take your financial statement, your information as you applied for a commercial loan and put those numbers into words so that the committee could understand what the request was and we take it from there. And I'm focusing on short sentences, getting to the point.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was a matter of thinking that you have to be as simplistic as you could be,
Right.
but that was a learning curve. I mean, I was in my early 20s when I was doing that, not enough wisdom about life.
Yeah.
But as I grew, I mean, I left that position and I moved on to other things, but I became a lender later on.
Mhm.
So I could look at an analysis that was prepared by a younger starter upper.
Mhm.
And I spent a lot of time trying to correct that, but, not losing sight. But, getting to the point is really the objective
Yeah.
of that type of writing.
Yeah. Exactly. And so, because people can only process one idea per sentence, if you're giving them too much to think about, you're
Yes.
maybe impeding
Overwhelming
them.
them.
Yeah, overwhelming them. Next point is all writing is a journey. You're asking the reader to go with you on a trip in your mind, in your memory, and make it clear and interesting and enjoyable, and make it sound like who you really are. So he's emphasizing that again. Make your point. And we covered in an earlier class the difference between a memoir and an autobiography is that an autobiography is simply what happened in your life, and a memoir adds the other element of why what happened matters. So that's an important little addition in writing your memoir. If you can see a larger purpose in it, that it can be communicated through it, that makes it universal for the reader, then you really have them captured as a reader and are interested and will continue. Obviously, every little detail of your life may be valuable to your kids and grandkids. To everybody else in the world, maybe not so much. So, if you keep it real, as they might say, keep it real. Self-esteem and self-discipline are also critical in writing. To believe in yourself and have confidence that your story is of value, just like your life is of value. A lot of people, he pointed out that confidence is a vanishing commodity today. And maybe it's a result of, a lot of things, but your individuality, express it. I saw an article about how, AI is never going to have the same potential as human creativity. They say that, that they're working on it, etc., but there's no way that a machine can have the same life that you've had. Only one person has a unique life, and that's not true of a machine. It's just replicating and mixing ideas that it has been fed, inputted on the input circuit. Develop your good work habits. You learn to write by writing. And that's really the bulk of how I learned over the 30 years, was having assignments and doing them. And they got better over time. And thankfully, my boss was pretty easy to please. And so we went from learning by doing it wrong and then doing it right and doing it better, and that's the way we learn in life. The magic of a word processor, he says, is to be able to reimagine each sentence and paragraph. So there's some advantage of inputting it directly into a computer and then step back and look at it and say, no, I'm going to change that a little bit. Some advantages to just writing it out by hand, and then you can cross it out, but you still have the original idea there, and then you can step back and look at it and decide maybe it's a mix between those two, whereas once you delete it on the computer, it's gone. You know, it's not, unless you keep saving each version of it. So, but he likes word processors and is a big believer in it. A lot of what I did for my autobiography after I had it all handwritten out is that I recorded it on my smartphone and turned it from voice to text, even though it screws up about 1 out of 10 words. But still, it was easier for me than typing it all in, and I think I did it in about 5 hours. I think it was, I can't remember now, but it was less grueling than typing it in, because I'm not, you know, I've typed a lot, but now that technology is available, why not use it? The other thing is, if you handwrite it out, you can sit it in front of a video camera. One person said, have you thought about doing these in video? Well, sure, but if you have a script, it looks a lot better than if you're just sort of trying to wing it. There's going to be an awful lot of ums and ahs and thinking, and you're going to have to pause it and do a lot of video editing if you don't have a script. Everybody uses script, from the president on down. You know. Okay, so block out time. Getting back to self-discipline, block out time regularly if you can, in the morning, after your afternoon nap if you take such a thing, or in the evening, a quiet time of at least 20-30 minutes. Writing every day is also visual, so short words and sentences are attractive and relate to our lives. So, you know, as you're reading, you know, if sentences go on long, you know, or whatever, it's not as visually as well as emotionally and intellectually stimulating as short things, short ideas, short. When I see a book that has, you know, a lot of really long paragraphs, I'm kind of like, before I even started, I'm like, oh my God, is this a textbook or what? You know, and textbooks can be the worst. Short words, sentences are attractive visually as well as intellectually. Use, and this is important, use active verbs versus passive verbs. So an active verb would be something that denotes action, obviously. Walk, I ran to this, I spoke, I launched, I built, rather than passive. And the reason that active verbs are stronger and they give it more momentum, whereas passive verbs, what he calls dead and fuzzy. Words like, the ball was thrown by the pitcher. Okay, why not just say, the pitcher threw the ball? You know, or the novel was read by mom versus mom read the novel. You can say it in less words and it's more active. So it's just a simple thing in being a little critical of how you make a point, making the verb a part of it more active. So that was, I thought, a very good point. And he says, use good nouns. Okay, so good writing can be like show and tell, and reveals our deepest emotions. Good nouns would include things like tangible things, like the house I lived in, you know, the home, the sky I looked at had stars that were uncountable. Oh, I saw a cool picture on the internet this week, taken with an X-ray camera of the stars, that shows how they're all interconnected. And if you believe in an interconnected universe, it's pretty cool. I actually have it on my phone. It's a cool article that just, one of the first times they've used an X-ray camera to look at the stars. It was a photo of it. So anyway, everything's interconnected. Sky, tree, the car crashed, earth, chair, child. These words bring emotions that are universal to everyone. Bad nouns would be words that are more ethereal or concept oriented. And again, like he says, fuzzy. like, and these would be typical in textbooks: orientation, instruction, words with 3 to 5 syllables. If you can avoid them, try to. Never ask the readers to ask themselves, what does he mean by that? And I really like that because it's, everybody wants to be thought of as deep. And so if you write something that they have to really ponder, is that doing a service or not? He says you're not doing yourself a service if they have to stop and ask, what does that mean? You didn't explain it clearly. You violated point 1 of clarity or simplicity. And lastly, write about your passions, hobbies, work, and travel. And to write in good English, guess what? You got to read good English. You got to read authors and other models in the field that you want, whether it's autobiographies or memoirs or fiction or whatever category. Find some authors in that field that have excelled and read them, see how they do it. Learn by example. And I did a lot of my work was in economics, which is very confusing to most people. So what I tried to do was to make economics simple enough for a smart 9-year-old to understand it. And so what I did was I wrote a series of commercials using my 9-year-old daughter as a spokesperson. And guess what? They were the most successful commercials. I mean, I've had written commercials for Pat Boone and Mark Levin and Michael Savage and all these talk show hosts, using fancier words. But the words that we used for Breda to explain economics were words that any, like I said, smart 9-year-old could understand. And I figured in that way, we'd hit the national average of educational level if we could shoot for a 9-year-old. I'm just kidding. We're above that, and I don't mean to talk down, but I'm just saying the point is a lot of things are written to try to make you think about their thing in a deep, deep way. But this campaign, called The Simple Truth, was the most successful national campaign we ever did. And it was a series of commercials. One of them, she has a little $1, the product was gold and silver coins. Okay, so people understand they're beautiful, they're historic. As an investment, a lot of people don't even really know, what. So she held up a little $1 gold piece, which is what's in this coin here. And it's the smallest, most humble coin that the U.S. ever minted. And you used to be able to go into a bank and trade a $1 bill for a $1 gold coin back in the day. You probably remember the day. The paper was the IOU, the gold was the real money, right? And you knew that. The paper wasn't money. But, people over time, so she held up a little gold coin and says, see this little gold coin, and she holds up a $1 bill. These both used to be worth the same, but that was a long time ago. Now, it takes 100 of these dollar bills to buy the same $1 gold piece. So unless you want your savings to, and by the way, she'd say, so your dollar is really only worth a penny in comparison to gold. So unless you want, your money to slowly and gradually evaporate away, convert some of your paper into real money, into gold. And then we had a free book that we offered. Simple idea. I mean, who couldn't get that? We did another one with a $20 gold piece. Remember those? There's a 1 ounce gold piece. I see people wearing those and I'm thinking, oh my God, they're kind of heavy. They're like, I think you should have a smaller one, but anyway. $20 gold piece, $20 bill. She went into a grocery store and said, let's see, this is a little Breda, 9 years old. I gave her a pair of glasses to make her look like the teacher in the commercial, because she was actually teaching the adults at this time. So she says, class, what we're going to do is we're going to see what this $20 bill will buy. So she gets one of these little baskets and gets bread, peanut butter, milk, and jelly. And that's about what you can buy for $20. And then she says, here's a $20 gold piece. Let's see what we can buy with that. And of course, at the time, gold was at about $2,000 an ounce. It's a little less than that now, but the point was we filled up, and we went through with a calculator in the grocery store 6 baskets of food. So we have the baskets lined up in a semicircle. So she stands next to the little basket with the $20 bill sitting in it, and with the gold coin, she steps in front of the 6 baskets and says, "This is what one $20 gold piece will buy today. 6 baskets full." So the moral of the story is, unless you want to live on peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, you better convert some of your paper money into gold money. People got that. It's so simple. I mean, people try to explain inflation. They have economists all day long on CNBC talking about how this and that, and all it is the government just keeps printing more and more money that makes every dollar in existence worth less. It's simple to understand, but it happens so gradually that most people don't understand it. So, we're talking about, over like an 80-year period that the dollar went to 100th of its value, what it used to be. And that's so gradual that, like Lenin actually said, inflation, is the best way to debauch the dollar or to debase it, because it happens so slowly and gradually that people don't really notice it. Well, this last couple of years, in part due to the pandemic and the misspent money and all that, I won't get into that, but we saw inflation, spiking up to 20, 30, 40-year highs. And so people are noticing it again. So anyway, but that's just an example of try to keep it simple, try to make it something that makes a point, it's universal, and speak from your heart. And you've got a lot to say that's interesting, and you have learned lessons that no one else is learning in exactly the same way. And the value of sharing that with others is that, like, the way I look at it is maybe I can help my kids and grandkids not go through the same thing that I did by making wrong decisions. And they're going to make wrong decisions, but let them maybe be different wrong decisions than I did. And so, the old saying, if I knew now what I knew then what I know now. Well, now you can put in your life story what you now know on the other end of the spectrum, and hopefully that wisdom would be beneficial to posterity. And so that's all we're going to cover today. Do we have any people that want to share one of their memoirs that they've worked on this week? We have 3 new people, so I don't expect you came prepared. Unless you want to just tell a little life story, you're welcome to, and write it down while you're telling it. No.
Not really.
Not today? Okay. That's all right.
Pat, are you up for one?
No.
No, I'm not up for one, she says.
Okay. Do you want to share one? Do you want me to share one from mine?
You share one.
All right. Let's see. Which one?
Share about the 9.
Oh, really?
That's
Oh,
gonna
wow.
be, yeah.
About the what?
I think it was the 9.
9 lowest points in my life. Okay.
Yeah.
It's
That's not in here, right?
no, it's one of the bit longer ones. But what time is it?
15 minutes.
Well, we have 5 minutes. I could probably read it. Okay. 9 lowest points in my life, which come to mind chronologically, are first, being expelled from school for smoking pot. Second, realizing that I hurt my mom by running away from home. Third, being involved in a church split. I was one of the leaders, and that was painful. Fourth, the divorce number 1. Fifth, divorce number 2. Sixth, the loss of my oldest grandson, Cole, in 2016. Seventh, the loss of my mother, Virginia, in 2016. Eighth, the separation from my daughter, Breda, youngest daughter, between 2013 and 2019. And ninth, my 2021 diagnosis of pulmonary fibrosis, which led to the double lung transplant that I had in 2022. So, those are the low points. Sometimes life deals us unexpected challenges which can change the course of our life forever. The best example of the circumstances leading to my divorce in Mickey, from Mickey in 2012. I haven't read this one aloud yet, so this is, by the way, it's very therapeutic to read things aloud too.
Yes.
In January 2012, I got a call from Mickey at work to come home immediately. It seems that our daughter, Breda, age 7, was caught playing doctor and nurse with the neighbor girl at age 4. Her parents accused Breda, that's her name, of inappropriate behavior and immediately called Child Protective Services to investigate. As upsetting as the accusation sounded, the truth is they were friends and this was their first time for such an incident. So CPS, Child Protective Services, determined this was an innocent case of curious child play. However, this conclusion was not shared by Mickey. She was 100% convinced that Breda never would have done this, never would have done such a thing, unless she had been previously molested herself, just as Mickey had been as a child. So she was projecting her experience onto Breda. She accused me of being the perpetrator. I was flabbergasted that she would even think this, let alone accuse me of such a terrible thing. It mattered not to Mickey that Breda denied I ever exhibited any such inappropriate behavior. Mickey then insisted that I take a, quote, lie detector test, as it's called, which I agreed to hopefully put her fears to rest. Little did I know, Mickey met with the unprofessional polygraph tester, to whom she explained would prove what she suspected and knew that the test would prove. Thinking that there's no way that I would not pass, given the allegations were 100% false, I scheduled the polygraph test immediately. The day of the test, I had my suspicions about the credibility of the polygraph tester, but I took the test, which was filled with disgusting questions and quasi-allegations. Still, I felt confident that of a good test result, thinking polygraphs were 90% accurate. I mean, that's what I assumed. I heard they weren't entirely, but I figured, yeah. I was innocent. How could it show otherwise? Following day, I was greeted at the door after work by Mickey, demanding that I pack my stuff and move out immediately. The results of the polygraph test showed that I failed. I now felt like I entered the twilight zone, where unreal, untrue accusations were confirmed by an unreal, untrue polygraph test. I was like, nevertheless, I moved out and began attempting to prove my innocence by meeting with another highly respected polygraph firm and retesting. In the process, I learned of several complaints against, they were called AAA polygraphs, for improper testing. Despite showing Mickey a volume of complaints and passing a second polygraph test, she refused to accept the truth and got a restraining order to prevent me from seeing Breda. Never mind the embarrassment of having the police show up at my place of business. The larger issue was the damage to Breda. Having her loving father suddenly ripped out of her life. After checking with the attorney, I was amazed to discover that because I was not Breda's biological father, I had a vasectomy at the end of the 3 daughters, so she artificially inseminated herself. But anyway, I had 0 legal rights to see Breda, and this was the most difficult, unfair situation I'd ever faced in my life. Also, the only reason that I didn't adopt Breda was that her mom said she never wanted her to know that I wasn't her biological father. So she didn't want me to go through the proceeding of adopting her because that would have tipped her off. Anyway, out of frustration and confusion, I met with a life coach. There's a plug for life coaches at critical points in your life for counseling, who emphasized with my situation. he suggested that I need to have extreme patience, saying that over time our relationship would be resolved. But when? She was now 8 years old and in need of a father right now, not later. Over the next couple of years, I continued to attempt to see her on birthdays and holidays, but Mickey said Breda did not want any contact. Talk about adding insult to injury. Nevertheless, I held onto the promise that the love I poured into Breda over her lifetime had taken root and would grow over time, despite my absence. The goal was to continue dripping love on her while waiting on God to do a miracle of restoration. Literally, I was looking at possibly having to wait till she was 18 before I could see her. On Father's Day in 2015, Mickey announced that she felt Breda was feeling emotional stress as a result of me seeing her occasionally. So she cut me off completely, despite allowing Breda to visit me over the previous 3 years, but never withdrawing the accusations. So it was one of these odd situations where she would occasionally let me see her. Here's a picture of us, the three of us. Breda on Father's Day. That was the day she picked to say, you can't see her anymore. Father's Day of 2015. That's me, and this is my daughter, Grace, that lives here in Sarasota now. The next 4 years were the most painful in my life. Without any contact with Breda, and being unable to change or correct this adverse circumstance in life forced me to accept it as part of my spiritual journey. Somehow, I even learned how to embrace it over time. Almost done. Our separation continued until 2019 on Breda's 15th birthday. Finally, Mickey decided to allow Breda to choose if she wanted to spend time with me or not. And of course, she did. I will never forget our joyous reunion. I took her out to the Olive Garden for birthday lunch. We had so much ground to cover, 4 years worth. We talked for hours, but mostly our connection was heart to heart. We were so grateful to be back in relationship and determined to make up for all the lost years. Since then, we have become closer than ever. We talk weekly and maintain a closer father-daughter connection as a result of our forced separation. Go figure. As they say, you don't appreciate what you have until you lose it. What was one of the lowest points in my life will forever be a forever be a reminder that great joy follows great suffering. So,
I say amen.
Yeah,
thank you. Thank you.
One word, amen.
Yeah.
So, it's okay to share your deepest, situations. Obviously, Mickey's not going to be happy reading that, nor my first wife be unhappy to read that I assessed the reason our daughters ran away from home was because she was so strict that she wouldn't negotiate with them, and so she said the highway or the byway, and they said, okay, we'll take the highway. And then it was my fault that I didn't support her in that. So, but everything belongs in our life. It's supposed to happen. We don't see it at the moment. Sometimes it takes years. That life coach, by the way, recommended that I read a really good book entitled Resilient. And it's by Eric. Actually, I did a book review on it. He was actually the governor of Missouri, and he wrote this as a series of letters to one of his buddies. He was both a Rhodes Scholar at Oxford and a Navy SEAL. Now, how's that for a combination?
What was his name? I'm sorry.
Eric. I
governor of what state?
Pardon me?
What state was he governor of?
Missouri. Yeah.
Missouri.
I can't remember his last name right now, but I can get it to you. In fact, I'll even send you my
Okay.
review of it. But he wrote, the point I was making is that he had this combination of brilliant mind and one of his buddies from Afghanistan came home, fell into drugs and alcohol, lost his family, and this was a series of letters he wrote to him about every area of life and how he could reinvent himself. A lot of vets coming back just can't put it together. You know, they're just torn up in so many ways that they fall into bad behaviors and don't know how to move on. So this was a book written to him. By the way, I ended up giving that book to all of my kids and grandkids for Christmas because it really helped me at that low point. But in any case, he defines resilience as, kind of like when you go through a circumstance, we all think of resilience, maybe it's like pulling a rubber band and then goes back to its original thing, that's being resilient. But he says, he puts the added element that true resilience is that after you go through a circumstance like that, you're forever changed. And so true resilience is not just going through a crisis and coming out, but it's coming out the other side of it changed and more able to deal with these unexpected things. So that really helped me during that time when I felt just powerless, to do anything. And he said, just wait and be patient, and that was the key. And so, like I say, we're now closer. She now wants to move to Florida, and so whenever she's facing any kind of a life choice, she turns to me, not her mom, because our relationship is so close. So anyway, so that's it for today, and we will pick it up 2 weeks from today. And I appreciate you all being with us. Time to go to lunch. Oh my, I went over 4 minutes.